Δόξα Πατρί και Υιό και Αγίο Πνεύματι και νυν και αεί και εις τους αιώνας των αιώνων. Αμήν. Κύριε Λέησον, Κύριε Λέησον, Κύριε Λέησον, Χριστέ ο Θεός ευλόγησον την πρόση και την πόση ημών, ότι Άγιος πάντοτε νυν και αεί και στους αιώνας των αιώνων. Αμήν. Lord Jesus Christ, bless the food and the drink we're about to receive for your holy now and ever to the ages of ages. Αμήν. Χρόνια πολλά και ευλογημένα, τις ευχές του Σεβασμιωτάτου, στους διοργανωτές και σε όλους τους καλεσμένους απόψε.
Μένοντας σε ένα παιχνίδι είναι πάρα πολύ δύσκολο. Αλλά με τη βοήθεια του DHI Canada και της Home Genesis δεν είναι η μόνη μας στο νησίδιο, στο πρόγραμμα και γνωρίζω και από άλλα νησιά πως έχει πολύ μεγάλη ανταπόκριση.
To be part of the Accelerate Greece program where I'm able to give back and help young people with their startups and their ideas launch their products and this whole next generation of technology that will go on to make a massive impact.
I have been awarded an international scholarship from Brock University. Also, I received the DHI Canada scholarship from Graduate Studies in Canada. The scholarship felt like a dream come true and a significant step towards achieving my academic and professional goals.
Το Σωματείο Φροντίδου ιδρύθηκε το 2009 στην Πάτρα από εθελοντές από το χώρο της υγείας και της κοινωνικής φροντίδας.
Frondizo plays a very, very important role in bringing isolated seniors together through their day program. One of the many reasons I'm delighted the Hellenic Initiative Canada supports Frondizo is because of its position within the community.
unite OLOI MAZI around a shared purpose to bring together the Greek diaspora and Philippines to make a meaningful difference for the people of Greece. Today's forum was filled with thoughtful discussions, meaningful ideas, and new opportunities for collaboration between Greece and Canada. We closed the inspiring day with an evening dedicated to compassion, community, and action. This year has been one of renewal and growth for the Hellenic Initiative Canada, a year that reaffirmed our mission to connect the Greek diaspora with impactful ways to give back to Greece and to Cyprus. Thanks to everyone's generosity and trust, we dispersed over $391,000 to support programs in education, youth employment, poverty relief, environmental sustainability, and healthcare. Each of these initiatives tells a story of lives changed and communities strengthened. From our support of the Center for Visual Arts and Research in Cyprus to our collaboration with Ikogenia's Youth Climate Corps in Greece. We are also proud of the ongoing success of Accelerate Greece, which connects Greek entrepreneurs with mentors and investors here in Canada. They are truly building bridges of innovation and opportunity between our two countries. Through everyone's continued generosity, THI supports those most in need, the elderly, those facing hardship, and young Greeks seeking opportunity. Your contributions have opened doors to education, have empowered families, and have strengthened communities. So thank you. As we look ahead now to 2026, our focus remains clear: to deepen partnerships, expand our youth and scholarship programs, and continue investing in Greece's future. Beyond expanding our impact in Greece, we are also focused on building a strong and united community here in Canada, working towards a truly national organization with representation and activities from coast to coast, all together, OLOI MAZI. Personally, as Vice President of the Vancouver region, I am proud of the progress we have made and the incredible enthusiasm we have seen. It has been deeply moving to witness how many people want to get involved, to give back, and to be part of something larger than just themselves. I would also like to highlight our efforts on an international level as we work closely with the THI chapters around the world to unite global Greek diaspora. On that note, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Mike Menatos, the Executive Director of THI US, and also to Stergica Samagas Hill, CEO of THI Australia, who joined us at this event. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the entire THI Canada family, I extend my heartfelt thanks for your unwavering support, your trust, and your belief in our mission. Without you, none of it happens. As we look to the future, I invite you to continue supporting our vision and helping us achieve our shared goals. Every contribution, large or small, makes a meaningful difference. Together, we are demonstrating that we stand united. OLOI MAZI. We have the power to truly change lives. And now, it is with great honor that I'm going to introduce our distinguished guest, Minister Christos Dimas, and the Minister of Infrastructure and Transport of the Hellenic Republic. Minister Dimas has built an impressive career in academia, the private sector, and public service. He is a lawyer by training. He holds degrees from the University of Athens, Queen Mary University of London, and the London School of Economics, where he completed his PhD as an Onassis Foundation Scholar. Before entering politics, he worked with the Boston Boston Consulting Group, and since his election to Parliament in 2012, he has served in several key roles, including Deputy Minister of Development and Investments, Deputy Minister of Culture, and Deputy Minister of Economy and Finance. He now serves as the Minister of Infrastructure and Transport and had probably one of the best presentations I've ever seen.
Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, it's a great honor to be here with you. With my wife, Nicoletta, we've actually had the opportunity to be in Toronto and Ottawa in the last 4 days, see a great, vibrant Greek society, and we're extremely pleased about that. What I do want to say, though, is that, as everybody knows, a couple of days ago, we celebrated our national holiday, 28 October, the 28th of October, and the timeless message of the 28th of October is the fact that when Greeks are united, nothing can stop us, and we are capable of achieving everything. And I really believe that the Hellenic Initiative represents exactly this case, that when Greeks unite, especially in difficult periods, like the period of the financial crisis, and that has to do with the Hellenic Initiative not only in Canada, but in the US and in other parts of the world, then we are capable of not only serving our country in the most patriotic way, but helping society and even all of mankind progress. So I'm extremely proud and honored to be here in this event of the Hellenic Initiative. And thank you very much, all of the board, all of the members, for the great work you've done in the last 9 years, and I'm sure that this will continue in the next years. The same, though, applies for the Delphi Economic Forum. And I was telling to Simeon Tsomokos before that the Delphi Economic Forum was founded during the financial crisis. And it was always, even in the difficult years of Greece, it was a very good opportunity for people who believed that Greece was capable of performing much better than we were performing at that period, across party lines, policymakers, entrepreneurs, social actors that wanted to voice the need to reform Greece, to proceed with the necessary structural reforms. And ever since, the Delphi Economic Forum is actually serving this purpose, and we're very happy that we had the 4th Delphi Economic Forum in Toronto. I'm sure that many will follow, so I do want a round of applause both for the Delphi Economic Forum and the Hellenic Initiative here in Canada. Than the EU average for the past years, and our projections for the years to follow are even better. We have significantly reduced unemployment, the largest reduction of unemployment than any EU state. We are actually in the pro-crisis numbers currently. We have created more than 550,000 jobs in the last 6 years, but still we want to create more jobs. We have increased the salaries in the country. The minimum wage in Greece in 2019 was at 650 euros. And I think everybody on this room can agree that 650 euros are not enough even for a minimum wage for anybody to live. We have increased it. Today it's at 880 euros, and the government has committed itself that every year there will be a raise, and by the end of our term we will be at 950 euros for the minimum wage. That will bring us way above the EU average. So we are making steps. We are investing more and more in research and development. In the AI era, I think everybody can acknowledge the fact that countries or even companies that invest in new technology, invest in AI, the ones that do it early enough are the ones that will actually have the best results. So we are heavily investing as well, not only in terms of human capital, but also in very big tax cuts, in super deductions for companies that invest in R&D. We actually have the most competitive tax cuts for R&D expenditure in the European Union. I'm 100% sure that many of you will have companies that invest in R&D, and I actually invite you to explore the opportunities that we have in Greece for more and more investments in R&D. At the same time, we are making a lot of effort to improve the ease of business in the country, our competitiveness of the economy. In fact, in the last years, we have seen Greece rise in the global competitiveness chart and the doing business index as well. Of course, we want to do better and better year by year. Finally, I do want to mention a bit regarding my portfolio. I'm sure that many of you visit Greece regularly, perhaps once or twice even a year. A lot of infrastructure projects are now implemented in the country, starting from Crete with VOAC, the Northern Crete Road network, which is progressing very well, whether it has to do with the part, the national work in Agios Nikolaos to Neapoli, the public-private partnership from Neapoli to Chersonissos, the concession that we signed in May 2025 for Iraklio to Chania, and we will be starting also from Chania to Kissamos, and we are paying for the studies in order to reach even Sitia. At the same time, we have the new Kasteli airport in Crete. It will be the most modern airport in Greece and one of the most modern airports in the world. The Kasteli airport is under construction. It's approximately at 60% currently. So we have a lot of things done in Crete, but even in the north, in Thessaloniki, we had the inauguration of the metro a year ago. Now by the first 3 months of 2026, we will have 5 additional stations towards Kalamaria, therefore increasing the capacity of the underground system of the subway in Thessaloniki. And for those of you who haven't visited it, I highly recommend it that you go to Thessaloniki to visit the metro. Actually, the Venizelos station is an archaeological site. Each station in the subway in Thessaloniki is a small museum where we actually are presenting our cultural heritage and the cultural heritage of Thessaloniki throughout the years. We also have a pioneer project for European standards. It's a Thessaloniki flyover. It actually will double the size of cars that will be capable of traveling in the peripheral road of Thessaloniki from 5,000 to 10,000 per hour. And it's one of the 2 main infrastructure projects that will actually make Thessaloniki much friendlier for its citizens, but also for the travelers. At the same time, we have the E65 road, which connects central Greece with Thessaly and Western Macedonia and even Epirus. Currently, we are building the last part, the northern part from Meteora to Grevena. It will be ready by the next summer 2026. So those of you that will be going to Kastoria, to Grevena, to Metsovo, even Yanina, you will access those areas not through the Peloponnese, but through central Greece in a much quicker, faster, and very safe way. We also have the Metro Line 4 in Athens. I'm sure that all of you are familiar that we do have a huge traffic problem in Athens. Line 4, the Metro, will actually pass through many areas that are very densely populated. It will actually ease a lot the transports within the city. I don't want to go through an extensive list, but what I do want to say is the message of change. I have lived abroad in the past for many years, and I know how much all of you care for Greece and what your feelings are for the country. What I do want to say is that we really know that you might have even felt injured during the years of the crisis about what was happening in our country. This still belongs to the past, and it partly belongs to the past not only because the Greek government has been successful in the last years, but because the diaspora creating the Hellenic Initiative and always being there in the difficult period supporting Greece had a very crucial role. So I do want to thank you on behalf of the Greek government and all of Greeks throughout the world for the great work you have done. And again, I do want to congratulate the Hellenic Initiative for this amazing event. And I had the opportunity to actually read the leaflet, and I'm very, very happy to see that the Hellenic Initiative has achieved so much, and I am sure that within the next years it will continue towards that direction. So thank you very much, and congratulations everybody.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Katerina Sokol. I'm a TSI Canada board member. It is such a pleasure to be with you tonight on behalf of the Hellenic Initiative Canada. Today, we have had the opportunity to hear, of course, from Minister Dimas, and before that, to hear from impactful voices deepening the bilateral economic relationship across a plethora of sectors. But as our world, including the economy, is ultimately shaped by politics, I am particularly excited for this next segment, a fireside chat on a topic that feels particularly timely: navigating the maze of politics and policy in a turbulent world. Guiding us through this discussion are two of Canada's most trusted and insightful voices in public life. It is my distinct honor to introduce two individuals who exemplified thoughtful leadership, journalistic and scientific integrity, respectively, and an inside view of the forces shaping our world today. Vasi Kapellos is one of the most recognizable faces and voices in Canadian journalism. She is the host of CTV's Question Period and Power Play, as well as the Vasi Kapellos show on the iHeartRadio Canada Talk Network. Renowned for her sharp political analysis and compelling interviews, Vasi brings not only depth and curiosity to the news, but also a strong sense of fairness and integrity. Recently named one of Ottawa's Life magazine's 10 most influential women, she's also a proud member of our Hellenic community and an exceptional ambassador for TSI Canada. Joining her for this discussion is Nick Nanos, founder and chief data scientist of Nanos Research and the analytical mind behind the Bloomberg Nanos Canadian Confidence Index. Nick's work has shaped how Canadians understand politics, policy, and our public opinion for decades. Beyond his role as one of Canada's leading pollsters, for CTV News, the Globe and Mail, Bloomberg News, Nick is also chair of Atlantic Greca Canada, honorary captain of the Royal Canadian Navy, and a recipient, importantly, of the Order of Canada. He also serves on the board of the Hellenic Initiative Canada. Together, Vasi and Nick bring sharp intellect, insightful commentary, and authenticity to a topic that is today as consequential as ever: politics. They will help us make sense of how policy decisions are made, what shapes public trust, and how political leadership may rise above divisions in these challenging times. Please join me in welcoming Vasi Kapellos and Nick Nanos to the stage.
And I guess we're sharing a mic? Why not? Okay. Why not? Yeah. Nick and I literally did this on screen 1 hour ago, where I interviewed him on my show the day before the budget. So I'm actually going to start off in the same place I did on the show, which is all of a sudden in the last week, everyone in Ottawa is abuzz with the possibility of an election. If you can believe it. Oh, great. We've got to hold it like that. So the budget is being tabled tomorrow here in Canada, and all of a sudden there's a possibility that it won't pass. Not all of a sudden, like it obviously existed for a while that could be the case because we're in a minority government, but nobody was acting as if that could happen until maybe a week ago when all of a sudden the debate was like, you're going to cause a Christmas election. No, you're going to cause a Christmas election. So my first question for Nick, and I'll also say, we're going to take questions from the audience. Off the record, you can ask whatever you want in a few minutes, but my first question for Nick is there going to be an election? And part B is, do Canadians want there to be an election?
Am I supposed to cheer you up?
That is your job, yes.
You know, it's interesting, for those of you that follow Canadian politics, there's two types of confidence votes, right? Something that is declared by the government to be a confidence vote, and then the budget and the speech from the throne. So, you know, the Liberals are 3 votes short in the House of Commons, but we have to remember the broader context. You know, the thing is that the New Democrats, which are the Social Democrats, they are in complete disarray. They only have 7 seats. They do not have a leader. They're basically broke. For the Conservatives, at least, and for the Bloc Québécois, I think they can realistically play tough in terms of saying that they're going to vote against the budget. But you know, the one thing that's quite interesting is that Mark Carney is not your usual type of politician. You know, one of the things, Vasi, and you know this because you've seen it firsthand and you know all the players, is that, you know, the minority Trudeau Liberals were horse trading to survive. They deal with the NDP in order to do things. No, they weren't horse trading?
Oh, I'm just laughing. I'm not allowed to say things.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, but you know, this particular Prime Minister is very different. I think for anyone that's an observer for Mark Carney, he's like, this is my budget. And if you want to vote against it, feel free to vote against it. And you know, just to put this into context, I think 2 things. First of all, the NDP are likely to abstain because they don't have a leader and they can vote against it. I think the Liberals would be happy to have an election, as long as they're not responsible for it. And to put this, you know, to think of it this way, in the last federal election, there were 19.7 million votes cast. If 60 votes in 3 electoral districts had swung differently, the Liberals would have formed a majority government. So why don't we just count the first 7 tables here of 8 people, and the Liberals could have formed a majority government. So I don't think they're afraid. I know that they probably don't want an election, but I don't think the Liberals are fearful on that front. So I don't think so, but can I tell you when I think the election is going to happen?
The spring?
I think, well, the election will happen before there's a deal with the Americans. Because if you're the government, defending a trade deal is much more difficult because there will be things that people might not like. There will be sectors of the economy that will suffer. The trade deal will not be as good as the previous trade deal. So I believe that the Liberals will probably have an election before they have a deal, because then Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives, will have to kind of put forth his vision, and then the ballot will be, you know, who do you trust to negotiate?
Again.
Again.
Because there doesn't seem to be a deal coming anytime soon. If you could expand a little bit on the lay of the land, because I do take your point about how probably if anyone wants to go to the polls right now, it's going to be the Liberals. But I do think also both them and the Conservatives have built in some assumptions about things remaining static from 6 months ago. And in some ways they have, but in many ways they haven't. Like, I think tomorrow's budget is a proof point of all the expectation setting that the government has done. Canadians are going to be looking to them to see, like, are you going to make good? Like, is there a tangible way to measure that you're actually going to make good on all that you're promising. And same for the Conservatives. They had a record turnout in the last election, built on massive momentum of a year they spent 25 points ahead in the polls that dissipated once Mark Carney came in. For them to assume that things remain static is also, I think, risky.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is that we have to recognize that that last election for the Conservatives was one of the best on record for them historically in like 125 years. But when you look at the structure, you know, I always get asked, you know, Conservatives always ask me, you know, and Liberals, politicians always ask me, what do I need to do to win? And, you know, for the Conservatives, they usually ask questions like, do we need a new leader? Do we need to change things? You know, you know, should Pierre Poilievre put a sweater on to be more liked? And actually, I have been fairly consistent over time, and this is what you know, the Conservatives do not need to change their message to win the election. They do not need to change their message. They do not need to change their leader. Actually, the destiny of the Conservative Party in Canada today is in the hands of the New Democrats. Because when the New Democrats are in, you know, a low level of support, they do not split the vote with the Liberals. You know, I think that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have to recognize that their path to victory is through the New Democrats. That they actually need the New Democrats to be in the House of Commons to attack the government, because it's much more credible to have one progressive party attack another progressive party. And that they have an interest in the New Democrats doing well. So, you know, I think Pierre Poilievre could do everything that he's doing now without changing. He could have the exact same message. If the New Democrats start to improve their electoral fortunes, that creates the condition for those vote splits for the Conservatives to win.
They seem to have internalized that thought, because there's some reporting, for example, over the last week that there's like a consensus view that they should not be criticizing the NDP in the House of Commons. Who was the most effective critic of Jagmeet Singh? It was the Conservatives, right? They're definitely not going after Don Davies, the interim leader of the NDP, in the same way.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the ironic twist. Pierre Poilievre was so effective at attacking Justin Trudeau, the leader of the Liberal Party, and Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the New Democrats, that he basically destroyed both of them. And it allowed the Liberals to get rid of Justin Trudeau. Like, maybe he shouldn't have been so good at what he was doing, thinking that this is the person that he wants to run against. And, you know, the thing is that he, you know, for all intents and purposes, Pierre Poilievre's effectiveness at attacking both the Liberals and the Conservatives created the conditions for the Liberals to come back.
That plus
Liberals and the NDP,
that plus Trump, right? And when I was here earlier in the morning, that's kind of where we started things off, like this idea that there's been this tectonic shift. I think your polling is so interesting in this field because there has been a bit of a migration there too. Like, you know, when Trump was reelected and right away started threatening tariffs, we were consumed, I think it's fair to say, as a country. We were watching every bit of news that came out of him. The markets were responding, the economy was responding, all negatively. And then, you know, an election was had on the issue essentially, and then a sort of like sense of, okay, here we go again, has settled in. And I'm wondering what your numbers show to support that idea that maybe we're not as like breathless about Trump every moment as we were.
Are you saying we're becoming desensitized? Kind of like the frog in the boiling water?
A little bit. I mean, the economy is not desensitized, to be clear. I'm not trying to minimize that, but I think just like as a society, are we as, you know, reactive to everything? And as far as like an issue set, if we were to vote tomorrow, would Trump still be the big ballot box question?
Actually, what's interesting from a mathematical perspective, the shape of the trend line for the coronavirus and Donald Trump are actually very similar. No, seriously. Because if you think of the pandemic, right? It was a massive disruptor. People knew the world had changed. They knew their lives had changed, and they didn't know how long it was going to last. Does this all sound familiar? The reality is, and the trend lines are actually very similar. And, you know, the same thing holds true for Donald Trump. You know, for many Canadians, they know that the world has changed. They know that their lives will change, and they don't know how long this process of change will take place. And, you know, the thing is you know, Mike and I we were talking about, you know, Canadians do follow American politics. probably much more than any other country in the world, and we consume and pay attention to that. And I think the fact of the matter is because 90% of our population lives within a 1-hour drive of the American border, we know that whatever happens in the United States has a material impact, either positively or negatively, on our economy. So people are very dialed in. And but it's a bit like a sensational story. It's kind of like an open wound. You don't feel very much pain, and then Donald Trump says something and applies pressure, and then there is extreme and excruciating pain for Canadians.
And what does it mean relative to the other things that we cared about so much before Trump took aim at us? I'm thinking of the issues around housing, affordability more largely. Like, have you seen that shift at all or evolve? Where does it stand right now?
Yeah, actually, what we've seen in the polling in Canada, one of the consistencies, the polling in Canada and the U.S., countries like Germany where we do polling and stuff like that, is that people are much more focused on the cost of living. People are much more focused on paying for the bills. People are worried about their jobs in the future. They think that the future generation will have a lower standard of living. But what we're seeing in Canada when we ask Canadians about what they're worried about the most, it's kind of like the top 3 are jobs, Trump, inflation. And then Trump says something and it's Trump, jobs, inflation. And then they go to the groceries, it's inflation, Trump, and jobs. So you have to think of those 3 things as the primary drivers. But the thing is that you look at other democracies, they're all dealing with the same issue. Young people are worried about the future. I think the most bizarre trend that I've seen over the last 2 years that has defied 35 years of polling is that young people are voting conservative and older people are voting liberal. That is contrary to what I was taught in university, and it's contrary to the trend line for most of the last 30 years. But it's because young people feel that their parents and grandparents have failed. They've failed to create the conditions for success. They have not dealt with climate change. There are not as many opportunities, and they're much more anxious. And so it's a very interesting dynamic to think that young people are voting for the Conservatives. And if you're over 55 years of age, you're more likely to vote for the Liberals, which is counter to what usually happens, actually, in most electorates.
How impactful do you think that is? Because it's even been something that's punched through over the past few weeks, and I say that because the September job data came out not too long ago, and overall the unemployment rate is high and steady, but in September the economy added jobs. The youth unemployment rate at 15% is at the highest level outside of the pandemic since 2010. Like, it is a crisis of sorts, and you're right to point out, like, if you think about the narrative around the budget, there was a moment in front of the University of Ottawa where the Prime Minister gave a speech about what to expect from the budget and talked about sacrifice being necessary, and the Conservatives jumped on it right away and was like, why are you asking young people to sacrifice more? What is that kind of schism to tell you?
Well, it's one of the interesting phenomena that I see is what I call a joyless prosperity. And this is why governments don't get credit. You like that one? Yeah. Okay.
Sounds like marriage.
I know. Joyless prosperity is you look at the numbers. Yeah.
Just kidding.
No, you look at the numbers and you wonder, why am I not feeling better? Right? You see the GDP numbers, you see the unemployment numbers, you see whatever. And the thing is that this is because, many young people especially are just not hopeful for the future. Right? And parents are wondering whether their kids will be able to live in the same home that they grew up in, or whether they'll be able to go on the same type of vacation. And, this disconnect makes it very difficult for governments especially to, you can have great economic data. And Minister, we saw great economic data that shows the trajectory that Greece is on, but there will still be people in Greece, as they would be in other places, that would be like, why don't I feel better?
Line it with inflation, which I just feel like, anyone I talk to, you still are paying for $12 berries. So even when someone tells you it's only 2%, yeah, it's 2% on top of 30% higher than 5 years ago. Like, it's very difficult to assure, I imagine, from any political party, if you're trying to put the spin that things are going okay, like, it's very difficult to assure people that is the case if one bag of groceries costs you $90.
You know, absolutely. And you know, the thing that compounds this, and we haven't talked about it, is misinformation and disinformation. So there will be people that will just not believe the numbers, or they will live in a world and an echo chamber where there are alternative facts. And you know, the thing is that the splintering of the media has made this even more difficult, because people can just be in their own echo chamber as opposed to relying on traditional media that have journalists that validate the facts and having that fundamental base. So you know, not only do you have joyless prosperity, you have misinformation and disinformation, and people disconnected and not very hopeful. So it makes it much more difficult to turn that around.
I think you bring up also something that is applicable, as you mentioned, to other democracies, right? Not just Canada, and that is an eroding sense of trust in, we largely say, institutions. But I think what we need is like a traditional way of working our way through truth, whether that be journalism, the courts, government as an institution. What do you see here in Canada on that issue relative to other democracies?
Well, we're on the same trajectory when it comes to an erosion of trust in institutions, whether it be the courts or our democratic institutions. You know, basically right across the board. Actually, if I was to summarize public opinion, it's like mistrust, we trust. Right? That's how young people are. And you know, the thing is that not only is there mistrust, there's cynicism. And that's why I think, you know, the path forward for effective governments is not to make grandiose promises. Right? It's to come forward and to say, no, good luck. But to come forward and say, I can make your life just a little better by doing these things. Like, make a promise that people can believe can be achieved. And I think, and you know, the other thing that we don't hear from politicians enough is that there are trade-offs, right? They say that they want to do something, and they say there won't be any costs or trade-offs. And I'd always kind of say, we need leaders that will tell people the truth and to say, if this is the world that we want to live in, you have to make a sacrifice. We all have to make sacrifices. And I think people are willing to make those sacrifices for the next generation. And I think that's basically the place where we have to go to. We have to say, you know what, it's going to be tough. And in order to make things better, these are the sacrifices and trade-offs that you're going to have to make, and get people to embrace that.
I just want to mention that we are going to take questions. Starting in like a few minutes, so I'm not sure if there are microphones that anyone can pass. Yes, there are. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and someone will bring, I think, a microphone to you. You can ask anything you like. Okay, amazing. Maybe just one question for Nick before we jump to the audience, and just to tie in, of course, the reason we're here, our heritage, our interest in furthering the relationship between Greece and Canada, because we both are keenly interested in that. We both had the chance to sit down with Prime Minister Mitsotakis when he came, and I'm wondering, you know, these months later, what your primary takeaway from that was.
You know, well, we both talked to him and heard about his vision. You know, my key takeaway, and I'd be interested to hear what other people think, is that he's driven, he's focused, and he has a vision for what he wants to accomplish. Actually, I don't think he's interested in being popular. I think he's just interested in doing what he thinks is right for the country. That makes for a little difficulty, but I think that's. I'd always kind of say, I'd always tell politicians that you're not competing against perfection, because if you are, you'd never win an election. You're competing against your opponent. So, my sense is that, part of his franchise for success is that he's very practical, driven, and focused. That he's looking at all those, fixing all those little things like digital government and all those items that are achievable to show that combined together, they can have a material impact on Greece's future prosperity. Now, can I ask you a question? What did you think?
Yeah, I'm just very impressed. I was very impressed at the time with his ability to get reelected in an environment that did not favor incumbents. I mean, we were all living through it here as well, where it seemed impossible for the incumbent at the time, facing the inflationary environment, facing a lot of the geopolitical factors. Like, nobody would have thought, for example, Trudeau could get reelected, in addition to all the other stuff he brought on, you know, kind of by himself, but just the set of circumstances. So I thought it was very interesting that he could get reelected. And as I noted this morning, it definitely stood out that he was yet another European leader who wanted to buy our LNG. We'll turn it over to some questions.
Yeah, for sure, and we would love to just keep on listening to what you have to say between you two, but let's open this up. It's an opportunity for everyone to ask a question. So please, let's start with people number 5.
Nick, I'm somewhat, as a recovering staffer to many politicians, I'm somewhat disappointed that you're talking about bite-sized chunks as a way to move forward. Trudeau talked about hope. Obama talked about hope. Is hope as a political message dead, in your opinion, for the foreseeable future, or is it something that political leaders can still aspire to and get elected?
Well, I think hope is still has a certain level of currency, but you know, we have to realize that, you know, for example, if 27% of young people are worried about paying for the groceries this week, they want to know on a practical basis, you know, the hope message, which is more long-term. They want to know what's going to happen almost immediately, and I think we should not underestimate the sense of urgency to act, and that people want to have solutions on it. And I think that's why being practical, and you know, you need to be ambitious in terms of the long run, but you need to deliver in the short run on things that are very practical. That's my view.
Anyone else? Any questions that I can see? Please raise your hand. Yes, please. Then go at the back. Again. Yes. 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 Thank you.
Hi, great discussion between the two of you. I heard Chantal Hébert say she went out for dinner with Mark Carney, and he said to her basically, I'm Prime Minister because of Trump. And I'm kind of picking up on Vasi's point. Don't you think that the Trump factor and the fear factor with Trump is waning? Carney, great guy, bright guy, hasn't done anything with respect to making any deals. And some may argue that it's in his interest to delay, especially ahead of this budget, to keep the Trump factor in place. So, doesn't it seem that independent of what parties are in power, dealing with Trump is a given strategy, but dealing with social policies and what the youth are interested in, the Conservatives may have a little bit more in favor to the Conservative Party. So don't you think the Trump factor is waning? And if there is a potentially upcoming election, Canadians will think a little bit less about the Trump factor, because nothing has really happened, and there has been unemployment because of the tariffs, and nothing is going to change that. And they'll start thinking a little bit more about everyday living factors that appeal more to the Conservatives. And if there's severe job losses, which are immediate, the NDP may then be an appealing factor for many voters.
You want to chime in on this too? Okay. You know, one thing I've learned, you know, back in 2014, 15, I wrote a book that a lot of it had to do with Trump, and one thing that I've learned is not to try to predict what he says or what he does, because he is consistently pushing the envelope right across the board. I'd like to say maybe today we're in a lull, but I wouldn't put it past Donald Trump, because, you know, the thing is that everybody knows that his strategy is to destabilize whoever he's dealing with. So once he turns his attention to Canada, his first objective will be to destabilize, the Prime Minister that he is negotiating with. That said, from a polling perspective, the Conservatives, whenever the focus is on the cost of living, groceries, housing, and things like that, the Conservative numbers go up. The Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre have a strong brand in that area. And the flip side is that Carney's brand is stronger on issues related to managing Donald Trump. So the big question, I think the most important question for you is, what will the next election be about? And I agree with you. If the election is about, the cost of living and so forth, it will favor the Conservatives. But if something happens during the election where there's a focus on Donald Trump, it will favor the Liberals.
I think just jumping off you, two things can be true at the same time. I think that there is a big intersection as well on what Donald Trump does, and not necessarily to be associated with Trump, but on this other stuff that matters to us. So like cost of living, inflation rises because of counter tariffs, which are put on because of tariffs. Uncertainty in the economy because of the trade war has led to a depression of business investment, which has a big consequence on jobs, and jobs are being lost because sectors are being hit so hard. So I think that the issue sets have a lot of convergence as well, but at the same time, that other stuff can feel more important if he's not going crazy on us, as you point out, Nick. The one thing I would say, and this is my sort of I don't make a lot of predictions, but this is what prediction I would make, we have not seen anything yet. The truth of it is that the economy right now is as resilient as it is because only 15% of it is being attacked by Trump. The rest, 85%, is covered by CUSMA. When that renegotiation starts next year, if he approaches it in the same way he has approached his tariff regime, and blows up CUSMA, which is not out of the realm of possibilities. Our economy, in the finance department, they predict that our economy will contract 5 to 6% within 3 to 6 months, which is like nothing most of us can imagine. So I think, and I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying the possibility exists. So the economic damage he can imbue on Canada through CUSMA will become far more consuming than anything has felt already so far, if in fact that were to be the case.
I agree with you 100%. And the thing is that my view has been that he's been so aggressive with Canada because that's been part of his broader global negotiating strategy. Because if he treats Canada like a floor mat, you can imagine how he's going to negotiate with any other country. And I believe that he will, I'm in DC a lot. I talk to a lot of folks from different parties. My view, at least, talking to them, is that we will be the last to have a trade agreement, that there's no benefit for Donald Trump to negotiate a trade agreement before the midterm elections, that he needs to have that level of uncertainty to look strong and tough, and that we will have an agreement. It might not be a great agreement, but it'll be after the midterms. Because I think Donald Trump is going to want to use that so that he looks like a strong president.
Time for one more question?
Yes, it's Eric. No?
A couple more, sure.
Let's have a couple.
My flight's delayed.
2 more here, over here. Try again, please.
Hello? Whoops, it's loud. Just want to say shout out. I watch your show every day, or almost every day, so want to shout that out. I want to ask a bit more into the youth trends. Obviously, this last election, you voted, more aggressively conservative, or typically they'll vote NDP Liberal. Do you think that's going to be more sustained? Is that going to be a longer trend over the next 5 years? And let's say we have an election, 4 years from now and everything sits out. Do you think the youth will still be voting conservative as hard as they did in the last election, or could we grow even more stronger youth coalition?
That's a good question. One of the things I learned is to say, I don't know. I don't know whether this is a sustainable trend. It's counter to the 50-year trend line. But personality counts a lot in politics. I think it'll be interesting to see who the leader of the New Democrats might be. It'll be interesting to see whether Mark Carney can connect with young people, which he has not electorally yet. And it'll be interesting to see how young voters continue to react to Pierre Poilievre. So it's very, this particular case is personality based. But the thing is that we have to realize is that young people, because they're worried about the future, want practical solutions today. And they're impatient, and they are frustrated, and the thing is that that's going to be what, in my opinion, that's probably what's going to be driving it.
I'll just quickly add, I think the key is the NDP. And I'll say, it's sort of what you, a little here, right? It's hard to overstate the fact that if the Conservatives had drawn what they did in popular support in seats, or popular support at least, and the NDP had come anywhere close to where it was in 2011, for example, they would have had a massive majority. So the Conservatives will be unable to secure a majority if the NDP stays where they are. If that's a fact. There's no way around that unless the Liberals were to completely collapse and everyone voting Liberal would turn Conservative. It's just very, very, very unlikely. And so I think the key will be watching what happens with the NDP. And right now, it is in disarray. There's no other way to put it. They have an interim leader who commands a caucus that has no caucus allegiance, and that we have no idea what they're going to do with the budget, which is why we're all wondering if there's going to be an election. And they have, 3, 4, 5 people contending to be leader, none of whom right now gives you the feeling that they're going to be able to bring the NDP into high levels of relevance anytime soon. So that could change. They have until March, but right now I think that'll be the key determinative factor, of any kind of outcome moving forward.
Can you try it?
Hello? Yeah, thanks. Nick, you made a comment about, or you said that people want to hear the truth. People want to hear a politician goes out and says something kind of like the Churchill speech, all I can promise is blood, sweat, toil, and tears in 1940. I didn't appreciate that. I'm not sure that's true. Going back to Nancy's point about Carney the other day at the University of Ottawa, he said that there's going to be sacrifice. I think he was referring, honestly, to the public service cuts, if anything else. And yet, the Conservatives saw fit to use that to bash him over the head and say, they're asking you to sacrifice, they're asking you to sacrifice. Haven't you sacrificed enough? So I wonder if somebody goes out, just blurts out everything they know, are people going to accept that? Are going to vote for him? Or not?
Well, not the way you said it, Jerry. They blurt things out. I think in a world of uncertainty, people want to feel a little more comfortable that there's someone thinking about how we navigate this world. And the thing is that this goes back to, if people are mistrustful of institutions, the first thing those institutions have to do to build trust is to tell them to be straight up with people. Maybe in the short term it won't be rewarded, but I think in the long term, it will be rewarded.
I just quickly add, I don't think that's necessarily, and maybe I disagree a bit here, I don't think that's necessarily the same thing as incrementalism. I actually think part of the reason that Mark Carney won the election was because he expressed something that a lot of Canadians have been left feeling, which is we are not in the aggregate or collectively ambitious, and there seems to be a disincentive to be ambitious in this country. And so he did a strange thing for a politician, and he said, I'm promising all these big, bold, transformative things. We are not going to kind of be this middle thing, this middle power anymore. The issue politically for him, I think, moving forward, is living up to extremely high expectations that he set himself, so he has no one to blame but himself. But I think that resonated with people who had been I don't know, like there's something difficult to land in political messaging when it comes to incrementalism. And I think particular to the Canadian case, we had all been left feeling like, why can't we do big things in this country? And he expressed that, and I think at the time it was successful for him.
Yeah, I don't think we disagree. I think that it's the same message for everyone. The world has changed, we must change. Period. Like, forget whatever we thought was the way the world operated in the post-World War II era. And that we all need to change. We have to rethink our allies, we have to rethink who our friends are, we have to rethink how we're going to do business. And that, you know, I think at the core of that Carney message has changed. Like, he dressed it up with ambition, but I think at the core of it is that we have to change. And I think for even young people, they know things have to change.
Nick, how the rise of China and Global South affect the policies, the international policies of Canada these days?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because, you know, we track the China brand like we do on a number of major countries, and it was really, as Vasi would know, it was really in the tank in terms of Canadians having a negative perception of China and relations with China, and this is in the context of diplomatic and trade tensions. But you know what? Donald Trump has changed that. You know, now the brand of China has been improving. It's much better. Like, just think of it this way. I think at its worst, 5% of Canadians, or 1 out of every 20 Canadians, had a positive impression of China as a country. 5%. Now it's like 35%. And a lot of that has nothing to do with anything that China has done. It has had to do with Canadians realizing that in a world of change, we have to be rethinking who we're doing business with. And I'd always kind of say, there's a difference between being friends and friendly. I think Canadians realize that it's important, and I think this is true for all major countries. It's important to be friendly with the Chinese. It's important to be friendly with the Americans, and this is where our diplomats kind of come into play. But that, you know, what we're seeing at least is people are just looking at China as another counterweight to the United States because of what they're seeing out of the Trump administration. Yeah, no, India, I would put India in the same way. You know, it's interesting, we'd ask Canadians about, you know, where should we focus our diplomatic trade efforts? Should it be Europe? Should it be, you know, Asia? Should it be the United States? And you know, the top response now is all of the above. That means that we don't want to trade reliance on the United States for reliance on another country. And you know, this is where, you know, Canadians are a little more level-headed, I think, than they were a number of years back, where they're thinking, yeah, we'll need to have good relations with China and trade with China in the same way that we have trade with the United States and trade with Europe, but that they're more looking at diversification and resilience as a result.
We promised 2 more questions on this side of the room, so please let's start with one of the far end. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Vasi, Nick, thank you very much for your commentary. It's a real joy to watch you both up there. My question is about the paradoxical situation here in Ontario. So, in our last election, Ontario won it for the Liberals. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but in this potential Christmas election, in such a stronghold, a conservative stronghold, provincially, right? We're a strong provincial conservative province. How does that play out? How do we become Liberal on the federal level? And how do you see that playing out if there were to be a Christmas election?
Yeah, bizarro. So this is going to be, you know, so Ontario is the largest province with the greatest number of seats. It's held by the Conservatives. You'd think the Conservatives federally would benefit from having a Conservative premier in Ontario. But how would you, Vasi, describe, Vasi, how would you describe the relationship?
BFFs, eh?
It's a significant obstacle for Pierre Poilievre in Ontario. You can't have a popular premier leading the largest province, who's technically a member of the same party, openly question your competence and the competence of the people running your campaign. So maybe I'm going to add another thing. NDP is the first path. The second path to Conservatives doing well is to somehow patch up or manage things with the Ford administration in Ontario, because, you know, the Ontarians swing back and forth. They're very practical voters. So, you know, I think until we see that, it'll be difficult for Poilievre.
Okay, final question.
No.
This lady over there.
No.
Thank you both so much for being here and presenting today. I had one really big question. You mentioned that Canadians are willing to make a sacrifice for the younger generation, but we're seeing the opposite from the business community, with Brookfield and Shopify, two of the biggest Canadian brands, moving down and relocating to the US. What do you think Canada can really do in order to incentivize businesses to stay here, to keep our productivity going, even though it's halted right now? What do you think Canada can do in order to increase opportunities for the younger generation when we see so many businesses moving outside? Thank you.
So, you know, we've done polling on how Canadians feel about taxes and competitiveness with the United States, and it's always interesting that, you know, ask an average Canadian that believe that our personal income tax system and our corporate income tax system doesn't need to be the same, but it needs to be competitive with the United States. And, you know, the US has such a large shadow over our economy, is that if we cannot compete in terms of the tax regime, then, you know, basically people vote with their feet. But, you know, on the sacrifice front, I'm not sure how many Canadians will sacrifice, but my point is I think that's the message that they need to hear, that there'll be hardship and sacrifice for us to get our economy to pivot the way we need to pivot.
I would just add that actually I'm even more worried about it moving forward. I think that what we've seen since Trump employed the tariff regime was a lot of people say this isn't going to work, and it has. Like, we need to be realistic with ourselves. Look at the auto companies in the last 3 weeks, whom he said, you know, I want to bring auto jobs in manufacturing back to the United States. What are they doing? They are leaving Canada. They are spending $14 billion in the case of Stellantis, south of the border, creating 3,000 to 4,000 jobs, and we have no idea what's going to happen to the jobs here. And I think that, like, what we contended with already in the form of competitiveness or a lack thereof with the United States has just been amplified times I don't even know what. Because in addition to the tariff regime he's pursuing, he also has an agenda of reducing corporate income taxes in the United States, getting rid of all climate regulations. Like, we just operate in a completely different way here. I'm waiting to see in the budget what the response to that is, but can we even contend with that? Like, I don't know what the prescription is, but I think, you know, the government at all levels needs to be really honest with us about what the problem is, and I don't think they are at this point. We can't just have this drip, drip, drip of companies deciding to go to the United States and us believe that we have some magic solution to make that stop. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and Vasi, when we talk about sacrifice, if we want to buy Canadian, and this is true for any country, if you want to buy local, there's a cost, right? So if you want to have sovereign cloud, a Canadian sovereign cloud, or a sovereign cloud outside of the United States, which dominates 80% of the cloud space, there'll be a cost. You're going to pay a premium for that. So the big question is are we willing to pay that premium because of the costs that will exist if you want to be less reliant on the United States?
So we have a final question over there at table 9, please.
Hi. I think you're both wonderful. I'm from Quebec, and I can tell you one thing. Trump he should get the Order of Canada. He has never, no one in Canada has ever had an effect on separation like he did. He just basically annihilated it because people saw the truth. And what you say about saying the truth? Well, let's look at it. The US is 330 million. The Earth is 8 billion. I'm also the Vice Chairman of the English Montreal School Board. What do you deal with a bully? What you do? If you keep on giving, he'll never stop. He has no interest in talking to us because it's not in his interest to. He also keeps himself out of jail too. But that's another story. Let me ask you the question. What does Canada have that the US doesn't have? An open door to the rest of the world. We had a school in Montreal that had a Tamil and black population. Okay? We had to put them together because we're shrinking. Guess what? The blacks looked at the Tamils, oh my God. The Tamils looked at the blacks, oh my God. So what do we suggest? Why don't you guys have dinner together? You know, the leaders and the parents. Coronation School in Montreal is now the example throughout the system. Once you learn, and what you said about China, 5% years ago, 35 now. That's interesting. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. What do you do if the whole world, you isolate Trump? Rather than kissing his you-know-whatsy.
So I guess that's the question?
What's the question? It's simple. Why do we have to follow the States? Why don't we follow Canadian thing? They don't need pulp and paper, water. So my question is this. What we do now in the short term for Canada and Ontario, which the young man over there, who's our future, why don't we change tact, internationalize? Do you think that would be more effective than, yes, Your Majesty?
Thank you. Can you please take this?
I think that's where Canadian sentiment is. I don't think that people necessarily want Your Majesty. I think that the issue is it's going to take time to diversify away from our reliance on the United States. The reality is it still is our primary trading partner. So my best guess, because there hasn't been a lot of transparency, is that the bow down thing is happening to preserve whatever can be preserved in the interim. But I understand the sentiment. I would just point out the rest of the world is bowing down as well. Where we thought there might be power in numbers, there hasn't been. Look at the deals that the EU has accepted, that other countries have accepted, Japan, South Korea. None of them are good deals. Nobody has levied counter tariffs except for Canada and China. So it's a different context than we maybe anticipated it would be. He's having way more success than any of us might have predicted the first time around. And I think Canada is now operating in that context as well, which makes it an even bigger challenge. But I get it. I don't think anybody in Canada wants to see us bow down. They want to see us leverage the strategic assets that we clearly have and transform, away from a reliance on the United States. It just takes time.
Yeah, but to your question on how to deal with a bully, weakness and appeasement is not the way to do it. So, so when we talk about elbows up, that has to be part of the strategy because, anyone that shows weakness with Donald Trump, I think is just finished. But I think this is where we have to be realistic. And when I say realistic, we have to build more bridges between Canada and Greece. We need to build bridges around the world, and we need people to do that. And the thing is I'd always kind of see this, he's provoking a rewiring of the trade regime, a rewiring of businesses, a rewiring of technology, a rewiring of security. And then, what it means is, to your point, so, why doesn't Canada talk about how it can cooperate more with a NATO ally like Greece to maintain its frigates, right? Why can't Canada kind of just start talking to all of its different partners? And, Simeon, when you think of the work that you do, what is it about? It's about dialogue and partnerships and making everyone more resilient. It's not being resilient against the United States. It's just being resilient, that it's good for everyone. And you know what? A strong Canada technically is also strong for the United States. You're right? So we have to think of it in that terms. Donald Trump might not think of that, but that's the reality, that if our economy is strong and resilient and we're doing what we need to do, that's good news for the United States because they have a stable neighbor to the north.
So thank you very much, both of you. Please join me in thank you.
Last but not least, I want to talk the other side of what the work that we do in Greece is not something we do alone. We are part of an international group, the Hellenic Initiative, which has, the founding chapter was in the U.S. and Australia, and more recently London. In addition to philanthropy, which we all deliver on as a priority, we are also committed to bringing the diaspora leaders together. And I am more than delighted to tell you, I guess those of you who were at the conference during the day, you've met both Mike Manatos and Teresa Zavangias-Hill, who traveled all the way from Australia to be here. Mike Manatos is the executive director of THI US, and Teresa is the executive director of DHI Australia. So I'd like to invite both of you to come up and just to say a few words. Again, I'm going to provide very brief. Thank you. Mike, Teresa. Both spoke during the conference and had fuller introductions, so I'll just provide an abbreviated one here for those who weren't attending during the day. Mike has spent his entire professional and personal life working with the global Greek diaspora and promoting Hellenism and Orthodoxy around the world. He has served on probably every or most well-known Greek and non-Greek Greek organizations in the United States, as well as numerous non-Greek related organizations. He co-founded the OLOI Foundation in Washington, and when he wasn't doing philanthropic work, he led for 35 years the Manatos and Manatos firm in Washington, and knows anybody who's anybody in the Hellenic, in the political world in the United States. So please join me in warmly welcoming Mike Manatos. Mike.
Just a quick thank you to John and Alexander, the co-presidents, for inviting me to be here this year. I've heard a lot about this conference, and as I think I told you during the remarks today, my 5th day on the job as executive director, John said, "Can I take you to lunch?" He said, "You must join us in Canada." So I fulfilled my promise, and my next promise is I plan to be here every year. This is really a remarkable gathering. I've been blessed to spend my career going around the country, around the world, meeting with Greek global diaspora. And I've got to say, this gathering really excited me. The enthusiasm, the passion for Hellenism, the fact, as I mentioned, 7.5 hours into the program, the room was still full, people were engaged, people who were kind enough to come up to me afterwards, so thank you for all of that. In THI US, we say that our mission is to unite Greeks around the world around philanthropy by investing in the future of Greece. In our first 13 years, we've donated $4.2 million to Greece, 380 different grants. It's been estimated that our impact on GDP, along with THI Canada and Australia, is over $500 million in our first 13 years. We're very proud of that. There's a lot more work to do. Having the minister here, I think, is very important. I would argue that one of our biggest challenges is helping the people of Greece understand the true impact THI has had on the Greek people. I think more people outside of the country understand the people in Greece do, so having the minister here is very important. I mentioned the next generation. I think of all the groups that are out there, THI is unique in its ability to bring in the tens of thousands of young Greeks, 45 and under, all around the world, who are off the radar. They're not in church, they're not in the traditional organizations by region of Greece. They're not in some of the larger organizations like HEPA and the like, but they are at our new leader programs all around the world. And right now they're just cocktail parties, but soon that will graduate to something that's like a YPO, a Young Presidents Organization, for those young, successful Greeks all around the world who want to meet other young, successful Greeks. So the future is very bright for THI. Thank you again for having me with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and we look forward to working more collaboratively with your team as well. And now I'd like to introduce you to Sterisa Samagias-Hill, the Chief Executive Officer of the Atlantic Initiative in Australia. First and foremost, we're delighted to have her come here because traveling from Australia to here for a few days is a major undertaking. So we really appreciate the extra effort you took to make this trip for our benefit. Sterisa, before joining the Atlantic Initiative Australia, and I think you've been there from the beginning.
2018.
Okay, 2018, so a long time. She had an accomplished career in higher education in the arts, serving as Director of Alumni and Community Engagement at the University of New South Wales, where she built a strong alumni relations function. She also held the roles with the Australian Council for the Arts and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. She's a graduate of the University of Sydney, and she's a passionate advocate of the return of the Parthenon marbles to Greece. So without further ado, Sterisa, please say a few words.
John and Alexander, members of the THI Canada Board, congratulations on what you do to unite the Canadian diaspora here in support of Greece. Canada and Australia have much in common, and THI truly values our close collaboration. And Natasha, thank you, because I think you sort of spearheaded us working closely together. For me, it's truly a privilege to be involved in the impactful work we do, and the highlight for me is being able to volunteer with our partner charities and meet beneficiaries in Greece, and that's what I'll be doing on Wednesday. I'm in Greece for about 5 days. You can join me in the volunteering. I'm coming. You're coming? Okay. 6 And again, John and Alexander, thank you for extending the invitation to me, and congratulations to Simeon and the Delphi team on such a wonderful forum, and congratulations on the Gala. I hope you get to your $25,000 target, Maria, wherever you are. Thank you.
One thing I forgot to say is you all are invited to join us on December 6th in New York City. THI is having their 13th annual Black Tie Gala. It's 850 people, sold out at Cipriani Wall Street. Well, it will sell out, so get your tickets first. It's a packed house, and of course, anybody in this room who needs a ticket, I got you. I'll take care of you. But really, it's a remarkable opportunity to meet passionate members of THI from all around the world, primarily the U.S., but it's a lot of fun. We have a reception the night before, and there's all kinds of things going in New York, including if the minister's still here, the rebrain effort with the development ministry will be as well. So please, December 6th, New York City, just go to theHellenicInitiative.org/gala for all the details. I hope to see many of you there.
Hello to everyone again. Well, it's my job to kind of bring to close today's festivities, if you will. As our evening comes to a close, I would like to take this moment to express our deepest gratitude to everyone who made tonight possible. First, a heartfelt thank you to the Board of Directors of THI Canada that work so hard to really promote the program that they have started and be able to achieve the kinds of things that you see in the brochures that are sitting on your tables. We are also profoundly grateful to our presenting sponsor, Saborito Foods and Delphi. Your generosity and support have made a tremendous difference to all. And also, in addition to Saborito, we would like to thank all of our sponsors that are listed, that you've seen. Thank you for believing in our mission and helping us to create an impact across Greece and Cyprus and within our communities here at home. To our volunteers, thank you for your energy, dedication, and for making this evening flow seamlessly. Your hard work truly does not go unnoticed. A special thank you to Delphi Economic Forum and Mr. Simeon Tsomokos for partnering with THI Canada once again. Your collaboration strengthens our shared vision to support Greece's growth and to build even stronger bonds between Greece and Canada. We are honored tonight to have our distinguished guests, including Ambassador Dimarkis, ministers, and other honorary guests. Your presence inspires and strengthens our resolve to do the work that we do. To our incredible THI Canada team, and especially for Tula Stamos and Maria Fotopoulos. Thank you for putting together an extraordinary event and evening. Everything from the program to the details behind the scenes came together beautifully because of your vision and tireless efforts. Also, a big thank you to our Ambassador Beck and his wife Maria for their tireless efforts to support the work of THI Canada. Last Saturday, I had the privilege to attend the Plotopsaltis concert in Montreal. It was an absolutely amazing event. It was a sold-out crowd at Theatre Maisonneuve, and it was an incredible evening. Robert and Maria, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for everything you did last weekend, but everything you do every day to promote the talents. Before we close, I want to make a small request. Please consider supporting THI Canada through a donation or by participating in our silent auction tonight. You've seen it in the corner. Please take another look at all the items. Every contribution helps fund our vital programs, from providing education and scholarships for the next generation to protecting vulnerable groups and supporting environmental initiatives in Greece and Cyprus. Your generosity allows us to continue making a meaningful difference in our community, in the communities we serve. Finally, I would like to remind you, everybody tonight, it is our contribution, your generosity, and your ability to work together to keep this organization thriving makes a tremendous difference. Each of you plays a vital role in helping THI grow its impact and sustain its mission across the diaspora. On behalf of everyone at THI Canada, thank you for your continued support, your passion, and your belief in our mission. Together, we're making a difference, and together we will continue to do so. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and Thank you very much.
GrecaTV is the television of the Greek diaspora, a place where news, music, interviews, and cultural shows keep our Hellenic spirit alive across Canada and the world.
Founded by Bill Fatsis, a retired justice, politician, and community journalist, GrecaTV is his lifelong dream to preserve Greek language, faith, and heritage for future generations. And it's completely free, anytime, anywhere.
Bill invites you all to join him. Watch GrecaTV, celebrate your culture, and support his vision by watching and advertising with GrecaTV. Together, we keep our heritage strong.